whilst the country was under lockdown restrictions. Downing Street maintains there was no party. One of the UK's top COVID advisors, meanwhile, has warned another nationwide lockdown cannot be ruled out. Professor Neil Ferguson says the Omicron variant is concerning, but it isn't fully known what its impact will be. From today, if you're over 40 years old, you can now book your COVID booster jab 3 months after receiving your second dose of the vaccine. It follows official figures showing 101 additional cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, with the total now reaching 437. Dozens of flood warnings have been issued across the UK as Storm Barra continues to move across the country. Meanwhile, more ice, wind and rain is expected elsewhere. A yellow weather warning for wind is in place across the west coast of Wales and southwest England until 6 p.m. And England have got off to a shocking start on day one of the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Despite winning the toss and deciding to bat, they were bowled out by Australia for just 147. Australia are yet to bat because the rest of the first day's play was called off because of rain. Those are your top stories for now. We'll have more on all those stories at 10.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. The weather stays unsettled today in the wake of Storm Barra. There'll be further rain or showers as well as gusty winds, and in some places still the risk of gale force winds. Because Barra is still with us, but it is now a filling area of low pressure, so the isobars will gradually start to become less tightly packed and the rain or showers become less, well, widespread, but still the potential for some strong winds rotating around the centre of the low, which will be across southern Scotland during the rest of today, and showers continuously feeding into many areas, particularly northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. The strongest winds today are expected across parts of South Wales and southwest England, with gales here, 65-mile-per-hour gusts for exposed coastal spots. So still the risk of disruption from that, and it's going to feel cold with those showers moving through in many places and the gusty wind as well. The potential for snow over the hills of northern England and Scotland, but not on the scale as yesterday. Through the night, the showers continue in many spots. The winds do come down, so less breezy overnight. And in some places, with clear skies and slightly lighter winds, temperatures will dip close to freezing, so a chilly start for the likes of central and western Scotland, central parts of England, for example, where we get some shelter from the breeze. But a bright start in these places, actually a better chance tomorrow of some sunshine coming through, particularly western Scotland, northwest England into the Midlands, and eventually eastern parts of England as well. Some sunshine early on as well for Wales and western parts of England as well as Northern Ireland, but later the cloud thickens. We'll see further showery rain push in here. But all in all, the winds are lighter tomorrow, and it's going to feel a little less unpleasant because it's going to be less unsettled. Into Friday, the outbreaks of rain that move in from the west cross the country, followed by showers. There'll be some sunshine in between, but by Saturday, further wind, rain and cloud.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys. We've got a show full of today's big stories and lots of discussion on the issues you care about, so here's what's on the menu.
Yes, well, Omicron cases are apparently doubling every 2 days, but ministers maintain they're not considering Christmas restrictions, for now at least. We'll be speaking to a leading economist and a modeller who has studied the spread of COVID, and we'll also be asking how worried we need to be.
Yes, and a video has emerged of Allegra Stratton, former press secretary at Number 10, joking about holding a Christmas party last year, which was apparently not socially distanced. And this was all whilst government guidance at the time had banned Christmas parties and indoor gatherings of more than 2 people. So does this alleged breach destroy the PM's credibility on COVID rules?
Yes.
Well, we'll discuss.
Sorry about that, yes. Oh, gosh, I expressed an opinion. Anyway, also on the show, hundreds of clerics, including 2 members of the Church of England's ruling body, have said that they are prepared to become criminals if the government bans counselling LGBT people who want to convert, so gay conversion therapy, essentially. We'll be discussing what a ban on so-called gay conversion therapy will mean for individuals, religious clerics and indeed counsellors.
Yes, that's all coming up on the programme, as well as much more later on, and we'll get your views as usual on gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be reading those out throughout the whole programme. But first, Patrick gives his views on the latest on the Omicron variant.
I think it looks like we're being gaslit by our government. There have been numerous times throughout this pandemic where I've thought that our government and others around the world have behaved very strangely. But what's happening now with Omicron appears to defy logic to such a ridiculous extent that I've come to the conclusion that there's something very weird going on. I woke up this morning to the news that Boris Johnson is apparently considering bringing in vaccine passports, telling people to work from home, potentially cancelling Christmas, and saying that the evidence indicates that this strain is worse than others. Omicron has been detected in 38 countries, yet the World Health Organization said that as yet there have been no reported deaths. The latest research from South Africa, published overnight, states very clearly that, in their opinion, Omicron symptoms are mild and that patients who contracted it have not needed supplemental oxygen. The World Health Organization has come out and said that it believes that vaccines will work against Omicron. In fact, the WHO's Dr. Mark Ryan said there was no sign Omicron would be better at evading vaccines than other variants. And I'm quoting now, if anything, the direction is towards less severity. There's actually a very good argument to suggest that Omicron might be a good thing. Hear me out on this. What we really want in order to get out of this pandemic is for a new strain to emerge that becomes dominant, but that's less harmful. Basically, something that almost acts as a kind of vaccine, really. And that's what many members of the medical profession are suggesting with Omicron. Indeed, I had a doctor on yesterday, Dr. Lawrence Jerlis, who said just that. Now, it's important to state that we are still learning about Omicron and tests are still underway, so yes, absolutely, there's the possibility that things could change. But let's just recap where we are today, what the current state of play is right now. Omicron appears to be mild, not resistant to vaccines, and hasn't killed a single person anywhere in the world. If this wasn't COVID-related, and a Prime Minister stood before the nation and said, "We've discovered a new illness. It doesn't appear to affect your health that much. It hasn't killed anyone, and we have a vaccine that combats it," you'd wonder why he'd even bother telling you about it, wouldn't you? If the Prime Minister then said that they were going to introduce restrictions that could massively affect your life, damage the economy, impact an already crippled health service, close schools, stop you seeing your loved ones at Christmas, prevent you from travelling abroad, you'd be well within your rights to say, "Are you mental?" We've got ridiculous headlines circulating today, like this one. Omicron could mean more deaths as everyone could be reinfected. That headline came from a quote from a doctor who actually started by saying that the data appears to show that Omicron is less severe than Delta. vast swathes of our media are actually deliberately spreading fake news about this, helping to whip up fear. They're using fear to sell newspapers and generate clicks. But let's get back to the government. All the headlines today are about Boris apparently hosting a boozy cheese and wine-infused Christmas do in Downing Street, complete with Secret Santa, which, if true, would prove that it was planned. This was at the same time that he was forcing people to stay apart from their loved ones. We had a health secretary who didn't exactly follow social distancing rules. And now, despite the fact that as things stand, it appears more likely that Omicron could actually be a good thing for us, we're being told that it looks like it might be more deadly. And as a result, we might need to cancel Christmas, introduce vaccine passports, and all work from home. I'll say it again. In my opinion, I think we're being gaslit by our government. Yeah, I just don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't think any virus could be good for us. It's certainly, if it becomes more dominant and is milder than Delta, then that's better than where we are, I suppose. What I would say is we're still in the early stages of this, although there are reports this could have been around for much longer than much longer before we found it. But we need to wait, I would say, a few more weeks at least, because of course we know once somebody's infected, it does take a few weeks until we know sort of the prognosis for that person. That person might very well end up in hospital. So I suppose we do need to wait, but I completely agree with you that all the indications so far are that there is not much to worry about.
And it's the messaging, right?
Yeah.
If the government came out and just said exactly what you've just said there, which is that, look, as things stand, it looks as though it's OK, but it might not be. We're going to do some tests. We'll have to wait and see in a few weeks. But that's not what we're saying, is it? That's not what we're hearing. We're hearing all the time, well, it could kill people. I mean, it might genuinely... I mean, this could be a disaster. We might have to introduce vaccine passports. We might have to lock down.
We should stop unnecessary social contact, which is what was said as well.
Why aren't they just saying what we all know, which is that so far it looks like it's all right, things might change, but let's just reserve judgment on it. Why are we getting all these fear-mongering things going on at the moment? And I just don't get it.
And when you say you think something weird might be going on, I mean, do you think they're using this as a tactic to try and introduce some of the measures they probably can't at the moment, or what?
Well, I think that's a potential. I suspect that they're concerned that over winter people are going to get colds and flus anyway. And then I think that maybe they're thinking, well, the NHS, let's be honest, is always on the brink of being overwhelmed, apparently. And maybe this is a way of trying to help minimise some social contacting at a time of year when everyone basically gets legless at Christmas do's all the time, don't they, really? So I do wonder if there's a bit of that going on. Look, I don't know. And hey, you know what? We might watch this back in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and it turns out that this thing is absolutely rampant, it's completely deadly, and I look like an absolute idiot. But I won't, to be fair, because this is where we are and where we are today.
Yeah, I don't think you will. We know what we know, and we can only ever make judgments based on what we know at any given moment. So, you know, I don't think... It could be... The important thing is we're not denying that it could be worse than we initially thought. We're just saying, let's calm down and wait. Yes. Well, let us know what you think. What do you think about Omicron? Are you frightened, or do you think there's much ado about nothing and we're making too much fuss about it, or our politicians are fussing too much about it? We'll be carrying on the chat after the break and taking your views as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But after the break, it has been a year since the first COVID vaccine was administered. And as we reflect on the rollout and effectiveness of that vaccine, the world is trying to understand the Omicron variant, which we've been talking about, and we'll have the very latest on that in just a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, the World Health Organization says the existing vaccines should still protect people from severe COVID as a result of being infected by the new variant Omicron. As of yesterday, nearly 450 cases of Omicron had been confirmed in the UK.
Yes, well, when it comes to hospitalisations, the most recent government figures here show that just over 7,300 people with coronavirus in hospital in the UK are there right now, so down from around 7,650 a week earlier. So it's going down, despite what you may hear. Although numbers of hospital patients with coronavirus are higher than they were over the summer, they are far below the peak of nearly 40,000 people back in January.
Yes, and daily deaths have been falling as well, and there were 180 deaths within 28 days of a positive test reported yesterday. Well, let's talk to Dr. Andrew Lillico, a leading economist and mathematical modeller who has studied the course and impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you for joining us this morning. Just given on what we know so far about the Omicron variant and how much it's spreading, how worried do you think we should be?
I think it's premature to be too worried about it. I mean, the state of play essentially has three elements at the moment. So there's some data that suggests that the Omicron variant is increasing quite rapidly in the UK, but from a very low base. So the R number, the reproduction number, might be around 3.5 for that at the moment. Often when these viruses first turn up, the reproduction rate is a bit faster than it turns out to be later once it's more widespread. You might remember the very rapid growth in Bolton earlier in the year when the Delta variant was turning up there, and it wasn't at all duplicated when it went across the wider country, despite some frightening headlines at the time. So the Omicron variant, it does appear to be spreading here quite fast at the moment. Second factor going on at the moment is that there's some tentative evidence that the Omicron variant might be relatively mild as a disease. That could be just a matter of the fact that the people getting infected have already had previous infections, or they're vaccinated. In most cases in South Africa, is that they've had previous infections. And so that's kind of priced in. It's at least comforting, though, that the Omicron variant doesn't appear to be escaping the serious disease protection of the vaccines. And the third thing is that the early studies which came out last night suggested that actually the Omicron variant may not escape as much transmission protection, that is, the likelihood of you getting infected by the disease at all. It had been thought that it would escape a very high degree of transmission protection. It seems like it doesn't escape as much, and in particular, it doesn't escape nearly as much as feared if you have 3 doses of the vaccine. So if you've not had your booster, go and get that, or if you've had hybrid immunity, that is, if you've had both the vaccines and the disease. And the UK is actually in quite an interesting position internationally on that. We probably have more hybrid immunity, this combination of both types of immunity, than almost any other country in the world. So it's plausible that other countries could actually have a lot worse problem with Omicron than we do in the UK.
OK, now, we're being told we're still doing tests on this thing. Obviously, of course we are, and we need to, and that's great. How long is it now before we're going to get a definitive answer on some of the things that you've just raised there? So how long will it be now before we absolutely categorically know whether or not Omicron is more transmissible, whether or not it's more dangerous, whether or not it's more evasive of vaccines? Surely that's only about a couple of weeks away, given the timeline we were told initially.
Well, it could be into the new year before people are still arguing about exactly how much protection there is for Delta from the vaccine. So it could be into the new year before you have very good studies of that sort. The reality is, though, that the Omicron variant is spreading so rapidly that will tell us most of the answer to these things by itself quite soon. If that slows down, that tells us that that we have more protection than was thought. If that keeps going at the same rate, that tells us that we have just as little protection as was feared. In that case, of course, we find out quite rapidly also how serious it matters. Because it's one thing to say there might be an Omicron wave. It's a completely different thing to say, well, do we care? I mean, the reality is that over the next year or two, everyone was going to get the Delta variant anyway. It was so infectious and spreading, and so many people getting infected every week by it, that everybody was going to get it. It's not altogether apparent why we care that we get the Omicron variant next spring rather than the Delta variant next summer. Or so it's not altogether apparent that it's something that we should care about, even if there is a big wave.
Yes.
Yeah, and on that point, and about the behaviour of the public, the government seem to have got it all wrong. Well, in my opinion, that they're not doing a very good job at sort of telling the public how they should behave or how they should behave sensibly. Their messaging seems very off, and they do seem to be telling us on one hand, there's nothing to worry about, Christmas won't be cancelled, and then some officials say, well, actually, don't have any social contact. So what do you think the messaging should be right now from the government to make sure we're behaving sensibly based on what we know?
Well, the government's message appears to be the Sajid Javid's line, which is go off and enjoy your Christmas. I think if Omicron's going to be an issue, it's going to be an issue in the new year. And if it's going to be an issue in the new year, having fun at Christmas isn't going to stop that from happening. So I would have thought that go and get your vaccine, get your booster. If you're actually sick, make sure you get yourself tested. All of those quite common sense things. But all this business that there seems to be of people cancelling nativity plays and cancelling their Christmas parties, there doesn't seem to be any basis for that at all at this stage. And the government, I think, they felt like they had to do something with this face masks and shops thing. And now they're complaining that everybody's reacted to that by doing other restrictions on themselves.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the worst one for me is I'm no longer allowed to kiss Therese coffee under the mistletoe. I mean, goodness me. I mean, that's an absolute shocker. But, I mean, for me, I could understand initially why the government might have wanted to be cautious and why they wanted to potentially make us aware of this thing and just do something token, like you said there, slap a mask on when you go to Tesco's or whatever. But where we are now seems to be, to me, a campaign of misinformation. This morning I woke up to Boris Johnson talking about potentially vaccine passports. We might cancel Christmas. This, that and the other. And the fact as well that he's quoted as saying that as far as he can see from the evidence, it looks as though this variant might be more dangerous than Delta. And that's just a lie, isn't it?
Well, it's not a lie that it's more transmissible. It does appear to be quite clear that the disease is more transmissible than the Delta variant. It's unclear what the balance of that is between immunity evasion and being intrinsically more transmissible. Most of it is probably immunity evasion. And one thing about that is probably immunity evasion mainly focused on people whose only form of immunity was that they had previously had the disease, which is the dominant thing in South Africa. In the UK, 90% of the over 12s have had some kind of vaccine. 80% of us are double vaccinated, at least 33% and more are triple vaccinated. And we have quite a lot of this hybrid immunity. Might be as high as 45% of adults have a combination of having had the disease and having been vaccinated as well. So our immunity mix is very, very different from that in South Africa. And just because it escapes the type of immunity they had in South Africa, it doesn't follow that it escapes the immunity we have here. It might do, and it is spreading at the moment, so that's not a good sign, but it's not guaranteed. And so I think we need to distinguish between different things here. The government is saying that they think it spreads faster. Well, we've known that. That's found. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily a problem. I think in terms of these other kinds of messaging, my sense is that the government feels like it's under a lot of pressure by journalists to announce that there's going to be some extra lockdown or all kinds of restrictions at the time, and it's saying, well, no, we're not thinking about that. We're just if it comes to it, we may do this and the other, which is much less. And so that's the way I think I would understand their position as being to try to manage a continual barrage of people demanding the most authoritarian and onerous and excessive restrictions.
It's amazing how many members of our media want to live in North Korea, apparently. I've discovered this over the last year and a bit. But anyway.
Well, Dr. Andrew Lillico, thanks for joining us. And please come back when we do have a bit more on the Omicron variant to see how things have changed there. He was a leading economist and mathematical modeller. He studied the impact of the pandemic.
Indeed, yes. Well, let's delve into my inbox, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Dear Patrick and Mercy, this is from Tom. Thank you very much, Tom. What is definitely needed is a new variant of politics and a new variant of government. We want some more honesty, integrity and common sense. Really interesting stuff going on about this Downing Street alleged, do I have to say alleged, Christmas party?
I think they have admitted it took place.
Yes.
The details, they're more reluctant to reveal the details of the Christmas party, I think.
And I think we all know why. Yes, really split this between you. I must say I'm quite surprised. I can see both sides of it, though. Look at this one. Hi, stop talking about old news. It's more important that that we played badly in the cricket yesterday. But a lot of people are saying as well, genuinely, like, look, that you don't. It doesn't seem like a lot of you actually care about whether or not Boris Johnson and presumably other members of the government had what I think is technically an illegal Christmas party, maybe in Downing Street.
But then some of you are saying he should resign over it. So quite a contrast. And keep your thoughts coming in on that at gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be talking about that very shortly. But first, let's take a short break and the weather as well.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. The weather stays unsettled today in the wake of Storm Barra. There'll be further rain or showers as well as gusty winds, and in some places still the risk of gale force winds. Because Barra is still with us, but it is now a filling area of low pressure, so the isobars will gradually start to become less tightly packed and the rain or showers become less, well, widespread, but still the potential for some strong winds rotating around the centre of the low, which will be across southern Scotland during the rest of today, and showers continuously feeding into many areas, particularly northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. The strongest winds today are expected across parts of South Wales and southwest England, with gales here, 65-mile-per-hour gusts for exposed coastal spots. So still the risk of disruption from that, and it's going to feel cold with those showers moving through in many places and the gusty wind as well. The potential for snow over the hills of northern England and Scotland, but not on the scale as yesterday. Through the night, the showers continue in many spots. The winds do come down, so less breezy overnight. And in some places, so with clear skies and slightly lighter winds, temperatures will dip close to freezing, so a chilly start for the likes of central and western Scotland, central parts of England, for example, where we get some shelter from the breeze. But a bright start in these places, actually a better chance tomorrow of some sunshine coming through, particularly western Scotland, northwest England into the Midlands and eventually eastern parts of England as well. Some sunshine early on as well for Wales and western parts of England as well as Northern Ireland, but later the cloud thickens. We'll see further showery rain push in here. But all in all, the winds are lighter tomorrow and it's going to feel a little less unpleasant because it's going to be less unsettled. Into Friday, the outbreaks of rain that move in from the west cross the country, followed by showers. There'll be some sunshine in between, but by Saturday, further wind, rain and cloud.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Paul Hawkins. Our top story at 10. The Prime Minister will face questions in the Commons later over a leaked video showing Downing Street staff joking about an alleged Christmas party during lockdown last year. A video leaked to ITV News shows Boris Johnson's former press secretary Allegra Stratton answering questions from Downing Street staff pretending to be journalists 4 days after the alleged party happened, whilst the country was under lockdown restrictions.
The Prime Minister condone having a Christmas?
What's the answer?
I don't know. It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not. Is cheese and wine all right? No. It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Downing Street says there was no party, but Labour's Sir Keir Starmer is calling on the PM to come clean and apologise. The Met Police are also looking into it. Political commentator Peter Edwards says this incident will go down in history.
It's one of those things that will stay in the public mind for years, if not decades afterwards. And it stings so much because of their hypocrisy. No one should think Boris Johnson's going to go this week or this month, but I think his leadership is now in terminal decline.
Elsewhere this morning, one of the UK's top COVID advisors has warned another nationwide lockdown cannot be ruled out. Professor Neil Ferguson says the Omicron variant is concerning, but it's not fully known what its impact will be. He suggested people may be told to work from home with the new variant set to take over from the Delta strain before Christmas. Also from today, if you're over 40 in England, you can now book your COVID booster jab 3 months after receiving your second vaccine. This change makes an extra 7 million people now eligible for the third jab. It's exactly a year ago to the day that the first coronavirus vaccine was given in the UK. Official figures show 101 extra cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, with the total now reaching 437. Roughly 1,000 properties are without power as Storm Barra sweeps across the country. Power cuts are the latest in a series following Storm Arwen, which caused catastrophic damage to electricity networks. Flood warnings have been issued across the UK and a yellow weather warning for wind is in place across the west coast of Wales and southwest England until 6 p.m. More ice, wind and rain is expected elsewhere. The Met Office says Barra shouldn't cause as much chaos as Storm Arwen. Boris Johnson and other Western leaders say they will work together to encourage Russia to back down over what they are calling threatening behaviour towards Ukraine. Their talks follow a meeting between the US and Russian presidents in which Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin of severe sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. An estimated 100,000 Russian troops are now gathered on the Ukrainian border. Australia are joining the US in a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics over human rights concerns. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the decision should come as no surprise after breakdowns in the nation's relationship with China in recent years. He says the boycott is in the national interest and is the right thing to do. Despite the move, Australian athletes will still be able to compete in the Games. Germany has a new leader this morning. Olaf Scholz has taken over from Angela Merkel after winning a clear majority of 395 votes in the country's parliament. The 63-year-old lawyer will lead a centre-left government ending 16 years of moderately conservative rule. He will be sworn in at a ceremony later today. And England have got off to a terrible start on day one of the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Despite winning the toss and deciding to bat, they were bowled out for just 147. Opener Rory Burns was bowled with the first ball of the match. Captain Joe Root also made naught, whilst Ben Stokes scored just 5. Australia are yet to bat because the rest of the first day's play was called off because of rain. You're up to date with the latest headlines. We'll have more for you at 10:30.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick, Christys and Mercy Muroki, and we've got a show full of all of today's biggest stories for you to get stuck into. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, a video has emerged of former Downing Street press secretary Allegra Stratton joking about the alleged Christmas lockdown parties in number 10 last year. We'll be trying to get to the bottom of it and get in touch with your views as usual. Our inbox is certainly split on whether this is important at all and whether this is old news and should be left alone. So make sure you get in touch and let us know.
Yeah, hundreds of clergy members, including 2 members of the Church of England's ruling body, have penned a letter to Liz Truss, the Equalities Minister, stating they're prepared to become criminals if a blanket ban on conversion therapy goes through. We're going to be speaking to someone on that very shortly.
And Storm Barra hit the UK yesterday and is continuing into this morning. Our reporters will be giving us an insight into some of the worst hit areas in the north of England and the Scottish Highlands after one person is sadly killed.
Yes, indeed. Now, we'll just implore everyone to go on Twitter and have a look at Mark White on there, who was absolutely covered in snow for us yesterday. And as far as I was aware as well, refused to put a jacket or any gloves on as well, or a hat or a scarf.
Yeah, he was wearing a cagoule.
He's wearing a cagoule, yes, absolutely. I think he's embracing his Scottish heritage there anyway. But, right, for all of that. First, Mercy gives her views, believe it or not, on Elon Musk's baby advice.
Tech tycoon Elon Musk, currently the richest person on the planet with a net worth of around 300 billion, has said that one of the biggest risks to civilization is the rapidly declining birth rate. Speaking at a conference, he said this: "So many people, including smart people, think that there are too many people in the world and that the population is growing out of control. It's completely the opposite. If people don't have more children, civilization is going to crumble. Mark my words." This advice is at odds with what those in the climate lobby have been advising us. Let's first leave aside, for now, the fact that it's all well and good for Elon Musk with his hundreds of billions to contemplate adding to his band of 6 kiddies. It's not exactly like the 200 grand price tag of having a child will be putting him off. And let's be honest, the man's a bit of a lunatic who named his last-born son XAIA12. But I'm on Elon's side on this one, I have to admit. I'm fed up of virtue-signalling eco-warriors and greenhead, piercing encrusted tree huggers telling me not to have more children to save the planet. Yes, it's true that the world population is projected to reach nearly 10 billion by the middle of the century, around 4 billion more than the population at the start of the century. But low fertility rates cause major problems for developed countries. The fertility rate reached a record low in England and Wales in 2020. As it did in America and Australia and Japan and in many other nations. And this isn't the COVID effect, it's a long-running trend. In fact, the UN predicts 3 in 10 countries are set to see declining populations over the next few decades. Low fertility rates mean shrinking labour forces as those of working age decline, which poses massive risks for productivity and economic growth. A smaller labour force and a burgeoning pension populations means a strain on government budgets and much higher taxes for the working populations. It means lower living standards, underfunded and overpressured social services. Stemming population growth on a global level is not a universal solution to all countries' woes, especially not developed countries. In fact, government should be doing more to help people have more, not fewer, children. Hungary's infamous policy to boost fertility shows how desperate some governments are to increase their populations. Families are given cash to buy new homes and more cash for every additional child they have. A married couple buying a new house with at least 3 kids could get a payout of between around £40,000 and £60,000, with every extra kid bagging you thousands. So don't listen to the doom-mongers who want us all to be childless and miserable. Elon is right. More babies will be good for society.
The man's a bit of a lunatic.
Well, yeah, but it's better to be a lunatic who's a billionaire.
An out-of-the-box thinker?
Yeah, he is quite strange, let's be honest. But, I mean, he's working for him, isn't he? He's the world's richest person, so good for him. But he is on the more eccentric side of life.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, the whole Meghan and Harry thing, isn't it? We're only having 2 kids so that we can save the planet. Yeah, all right, OK.
Yeah.
Fine. I mean, did you have to reproduce at all?
OK, that's a bit harsh. But I feel like Elon Musk can have as many children as he wants because, for obvious reasons, he can afford them. But I feel this idea that all of us should consider having fewer children to save the climate, it's like a blanket, it's like a catch-all solution that doesn't actually work, because what we need to be doing in lots of developed countries is having more children. That's what we need to be doing. So this idea that we should just stop having children, and which will actually just ruin life and make us all miserable in the future when we're paying lots of taxes and there's an ageing population and our healthcare services are crippled. That's not a country I want to live in.
I wonder whether or not maybe we've just hit peak evolution, where it's like now we just make ourselves extinct.
Yeah, I feel like
we just decide to stop bothering. You know?
It's all very depressing, I think. I know David Attenborough, they are well respected. I'm not just saying it's lunatics who want us to have fewer children, but well respected people like Sir David Attenborough and Prince William have expressed concerns about population growth. My point is, it's not a universal thing. A lot of countries, especially in Europe, have a declining birth rate, and that's a problem.
And also, look, you're not going to... It's all very well and good, people like Meghan and Harry deciding to only have 2 kids. You're not going to stop people in huge parts of especially like the third world and places like that, just having loads of kids. That's just going to happen. That's going to be a thing. So it's completely irrelevant whether or not we decide to have less.
Yes.
Fewer, whichever one it is.
Fewer kids.
Fewer, there we go. Anyway, moving away. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is expected to face a grilling today in the Commons. Now, it comes after a video emerged of former Downing Street Press Secretary Allegra Stratton joking about holding a Christmas party at Number 10. This was just 4 days after the event supposedly took place. You're very split on this, so, keep those views coming in, but it's definitely about 50-50. Anyway, press room staff are seen asking her mock questions during a TV rehearsal for a briefing.
I've just seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know. It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Yes, it is recorded, yes.
I find her insufferable, I can't lie to you.
Wow.
I do, I really do. I am. That's how I feel, but that's not how you feel. It's really uncomfortable to watch that. She just really looks so smug about the fact that, the Prime Minister and whoever was there was breaking these rules. Bearing in mind, at the time, the government guidelines for this alleged party were that indoor gatherings of more than 2 were banned, that explicitly told people not to have Christmas parties. And the idea that she stood there at this mock briefing sort of laughing away about having cheese and wine, and it's just so smug.
Yeah, a lot of you, it's fair to say, don't care about this. Nobody's interested whether or not they had a party at 10 Downing Street. Many of us had social gatherings as well. That's from Kevin.
Yeah, but that's not the point, and that's completely true. I don't care that they had a party. I care that they were banning people from having parties and banning indoor gatherings of 2, and police were turning up at people's houses when they were trying to have, their friends over, and they were doing this. That's my problem, not the fact that they had a bit of a party.
I can't really lie. A lot of you are getting in touch to say that you don't. Here we go. What's happening with the world? I have no interest in a party or non-party last year. Another Kevin, all the Kevins today. There's a lot of that. I'm not really, actually, as it turns out now, anyway, seeing a huge amount of people saying that they massively care. For me, I do think it's wrong. I've got to be honest with you. I do really think it's wrong. But also, for me, the big message is, how scared are this lot of COVID? Really? How scared are they? They actually can have mass gatherings, they can be maskless at a beach with the G7 or whatever, they can have a load of people around to their house, but we should all be terrified of it, should we?
Yes, well, the alleged party happened on December the 18th, and initial reports were that 40 to 50 people were in attendance. And as we mentioned there, London at the time was in Tier 3 restrictions, which forbid households mixing indoors at the time. Indoor gatherings of 2 or more were definitely banned. So Keir Starmer has called on the PM to come clean and apologise for what he calls are shameful lies and jokes ahead of Prime Minister's questions this afternoon.
Yes, well, look, definitely. I mean, Prime Minister's question time is going to be gripping. It's going to be good stuff today. Anyway, let's talk to Joe Twyman, who's co-founder and director of Delta Poll, an independent public opinion consultancy. Joe, thank you very much. What's your make of what the public opinion is on this? Because, well, it looks to me anyway like the GB News viewers don't really seem to care.
Well, some GB News viewers who go to the trouble of contacting you at 10 o'clock in the morning on a weekday may indeed not care. But I imagine that they will also, largely, if not entirely, be supporters of, if not Boris Johnson, then certainly the Conservatives as well. And so what they're reflecting is the fact that if you are a strong, staunch Conservative supporter, or if you don't see a viable alternative to the Conservatives, or if you're particularly anti-lockdown, you're going to support this position. But among the general public, among a representative sample of the population, I imagine that what we would see is a great deal of dissatisfaction with the Prime Minister's behaviour on this subject, but also with the wider issue. I think if you were to ask people whether they supported the decision to have a party, if indeed that did take place, then they'd be very negative towards that, generally speaking. But having said that, it's not really now about the party as much as it is about the fact that the government is refusing to talk about it, and the fact that for so long many government ministers said that a party didn't take place and that COVID rules were followed. Well, the evidence from the video, which, as Mercy said, did not look great, that suggests that certainly something did take place that was not in line with COVID rules.
And I remember last year, or God knows when it was, but when Dominic Cummings decided to take that trip to Barnard Castle, many people identified that moment as the moment where lots of people in the country said, I'm not going to listen to the government anymore, they're all hypocrites, I'm going to do what I want in terms of COVID rules. We've got this new variant Omicron, and the government is trying to maintain the public message on that, making sure people behave how they want them to. Do you think this incident, I know it was a year ago, but do you think the revelations around this could be perhaps a Cummings Mark II moment where people will say the government's credibility is lost on advising us what to do on COVID rules?
Well, I think that's the really interesting question, because you could talk about, well, what influence is this going to have on voting intention in the polls? What influence will this have on the next general election? And the likelihood is that these individual events, yes, they have the potential to have a cumulative impact over the longer term, but they're unlikely to make a big difference. If you look at Barnard Castle, for instance, if that hadn't happened, could you argue that the government's position in the polls would be significantly different today? It's hard to argue that. But when it comes to support for particular measures, and particularly for future lockdowns, I think there is the potential danger that the actions like this really could call into question, and particularly those people who were erring on the side of caution, but also open to a more relaxed approach. I think they may turn around and say, "Well, hang on, what if the government is breaking the rules? Why should we stick to them?" Particularly people who are at lower risk of at least hospitalisation, let alone death from COVID. And so that means younger people going into Christmas may well question whether they need to stick to this. And this, of course, is really important because the government really needs the option of lockdowns in its armoury if it's going to deal with the pandemic effectively.
Yeah. What's the actual public appetite for another general election? Because that's what this would really mean. If Boris Johnson goes, then we'd have to have a new Conservative Party leader, and then at some point, relatively soon after that, we'd probably have to have a general election. Does anyone want that?
Well, I mean, you can ask that question at any time of the political cycle. And what you find is that supporters of the party that is not in government are strong supporters of a new general election. And those people who are supporters of the party with an 80-seat majority are not in support of a general election. And so you get dividing along party lines, and it wouldn't really tell you very much. And so the country would be divided. But I don't think there's going to be a general election anytime soon. I think that while this is damaging in terms of, as Mercy said, while this is damaging in terms of how the government approaches lockdowns, particularly the potential lockdown around Christmas, while public support for that may be damaged, I don't think that the long-term impact of this one event will impact on the public support for the Conservatives versus Labour versus the other parties. I think in that respect, this is more of a talking point than a turning point. But I do think the cumulative effect of Barnard Castle, of Owen Paterson, of Downing Street Christmas parties and everything else will have a long-term impact on the trends. But that will take some time to come through.
Well, Joe Twyman, thank you so much for your time this morning and talking us through that co-founder and director of Delta Poll, which is a independent public opinion consultancy.
Yeah, Lee's been in touch. Thank you very much for this, Lee. He says he really cares about this Christmas party, alleged Christmas party. We were prevented from having our 90-year-old granddad at Christmas while they were partying with colleagues. And he says, yes, I do care. And he wants Boris Johnson to go. So, so that's that. Give it a rest. We're all partied out about the OTT number 10 party coverage malarkey. Enough is enough. That's from John. So that in itself there just kind of identifies the split with our viewers on this, really.
Yes, indeed, and keep those views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But after the break, hundreds of members of the clergy have written an open letter to Liz Truss, who's the Equalities Minister, protesting plans for a blanket ban on conversion therapy. A church leader who opposes the ban will join us live to talk us through it. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Storm Barra may be now easing, but it stays windy through the rest of today with further showers or, in some places, prolonged rain. But there will be some drier periods. Barra is still centred across the UK, but it's filling. It's becoming less severe. Nevertheless, strong winds continue to rotate around that low, particularly around the peripheries of it, northeast Scotland into parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest. And it's for West Wales as well as the southwest where the strongest wind gusts will be this afternoon, 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts, risk of disruption. And further bands of showers and rain affecting northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Western England and Wales. Prolonged rain in places. So feeling quite cold where we've got the rain coming through, where we've got that strong wind, highs of just 8 Celsius. But there will be some drier weather. The Midlands, East Anglia, Southeast England, Western Scotland, the favoured spots for some drier and brighter interludes at times through the day and overnight. Clearing skies across parts of northern UK in particular, with lighter winds eventually will lead to a touch of frost in places, say for northeast England, parts of central Scotland. Otherwise, lots of cloud and further showers coming and going, one or two making their way further east as we start off Thursday. But eventually, by the afternoon, things do start to brighten up. Cloudy initially in the east, but by the afternoon, sunny spells coming through. Whilst a reversal of fortunes further west, it turns cloudy with areas of rain moving in by mid-afternoon. And the milder air returns to the southwest, 12 Celsius here, whilst it stays cold, where we've got the brighter weather further east. The cloud and rain make their way across the country during the evening, some mountain snow for Scotland, followed by showers, and those showers will continue into Friday, particularly across western parts of the country, but there'll be some sunshine in between. And Saturday sees another area of rain move in from the west. It will also turn milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, hundreds of members of the clergy have written an open letter to Liz Truss, who holds cabinet briefs for both foreign affairs and equalities, to protest plans for a blanket ban on conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is the practice of attempting to change an individual's sexual orientation and has traditionally been used to convert gay people from homosexuality to heterosexuality.
Yes, well, the signatories of the letter have indicated that they're prepared to become criminals and face the legal consequences of defying the ban if the government presses on with these plans. Well, Graham Nichols is a national church leader and director of Affinity Churches, which represents 100,000 evangelical churches. Thank you very much. So, are you in favour of, are you in favour of gay conversion therapy?
I think as you've defined it, not at all in terms of persuading someone against their will, particularly by disreputable and brutal practices to change their sexual preference or anything like that. Not in favour of that at all. So I would be in favour of banning that. I don't think there are laws necessary to do that, because I think they're covered by existing laws. I think the problem is that conversion therapy is not well defined at all. And those who are campaigning, not so much the government, funnily enough, but those who are campaigning about the law actually want to stop ordinary pastors going about their ordinary business of saying, this is what God's word says, this is what the Bible says about who you are, about your identity, about how you're to live, about marriage, about sexuality. This is what the Bible says. And you know, we encourage you to obey what the Bible says. That's just the normal business of being a church leader, a church pastor, a youth leader, or a Christian parent. And it's that could potentially be banned if the law is implemented as some people want it. And that's why we're protesting as ordinary kind of jobbing pastors. You know, we're not big campaigning organizations. We're just people who do our normal business of caring for people, showing them love, taking them where they're at, and seeking them to show them God's love.
So if a gay person, a young gay person, comes to you and says, I'm a dedicated Christian and I know that the Bible actively discourages, to use a euphemism, homosexuality, yeah, and I want to be a dedicated Christian and live exactly by the rules, so to speak, of Christianity, what would you advise them?
Well, it's a really good scenario, isn't it? That I would advise them to do what they want to do, and I would help them do what they want to do. It's so ironic that if someone went to a clinic and said, I want to change my gender, you know, culture and the people who are campaigning for this law would say, that's absolutely fine, do it. If someone comes to my church and says, I want to either live a celibate life or I just simply want to live in a way that's obedient to God, of course, we'd encourage them to do that because we think that's what God's word teaches. We'd never coerce anyone or try and control them or bribe them or threaten them, and certainly nowhere near doing anything that's kind of suggested when people talk about brutal practices. But just chatting with people and praying with people, it's the normal business of church life. So in that scenario you just gave, yeah, of course, I'd pray with them and say, yeah, that's great. You want to be faithful to God. Let me see how we can help you do that and encourage you and support you in doing that. If that's not what we want to do.
But the conversion therapy has been criticised for being pseudo-scientific and assuming that you can't even change who you happen to be attracted to. What do you make of that? Because isn't it the case that you can't force somebody to be attracted to a different gender if they're naturally not attracted to that gender?
And I would never, absolutely, I would never force anyone. But you talk about pseudoscience. Identity is pseudoscience. There's no real scientific basis. We've got biology, which is, we've got the bits we've got, and we've got the DNA we've got with the gender programmed into every single cell. That's science. Pseudoscience is saying, well, I have a different function. I have a different identity. That's pseudoscience. And we welcome people who are struggling with that and working through that identity. But we can't just affirm everything that we think is wrong. We can't just say, well, it's all absolutely fine. And it's not even scientific. Pseudoscience is locating identity as something distinct from gender.
Can practicing gay people go to heaven?
Of course, practicing. It's not for me who decides who goes to heaven. Who goes to heaven is those people who trust in the Lord Jesus Christ to forgive their sins and are following him as their Lord. That's the people who go to heaven. So, of course, there are Christians who are practicing gay people. But anyway, it's not for me to decide. But if you want my opinion, that's my opinion. It's not about whether they get to heaven or not. It's not about whether God loves them or not. It's just, in all cases, about what does God want you to do? How do you live out the Christian life best?
Yeah, no, I've said, and I do say, I think as well, for what it's worth, I think you raise a cracking point about the idea now that, like you said there, a child come with their parent, for example, could walk into a clinic and maybe start the process of changing their gender or whatever. But I suppose if we're talking about the idea that you can't, supposedly anyway, maybe help people if they're struggling with their sexuality or whatever, as long as it's non-violent and non-coercive and stuff like that. I mean, it shouldn't be a controversial thing, I don't think. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us and imparting your views onto our show. That was Graham Nichols there, a national church leader and director of Affinity Churches, which represent 100,000 evangelical churches.
A very interesting interview there. Let us know your thoughts as well, GBViews, at gbnews.uk. But after the break, we'll be speaking to our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, about the first anniversary of the coronavirus vaccine and how it has changed people's day-to-day life. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, I'm Paul Hawkins. Your top stories at 10:30. The Prime Minister will face questions in the Commons later over a video leaked to ITV News showing Downing Street staff joking about an alleged Christmas party during lockdown last year. The video shows Boris Johnson's former press secretary Allegra Stratton answering questions during a mock briefing 4 days after the alleged party happened while the country was under lockdown restrictions. Downing Street maintains there was no party. One of the UK's top COVID advisors has warned another nationwide lockdown cannot be ruled out. Professor Neil Ferguson says the Omicron variant is concerning, but it isn't fully known what its impact will be. From today, if you're over 40 years old, you can now book your COVID booster jab 3 months after receiving your second dose of the vaccine. It follows official figures showing 101 additional cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, with the total now reaching 437. Roughly 1,000 properties are without power as Storm Barra sweeps across the country. A yellow weather warning for wind is in place across the west coast of Wales and southwest England until 6 p.m. Meanwhile, more ice, wind and rain is expected elsewhere. And England have got off to a terrible start on day one of the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Despite winning the toss and deciding to bat, they were bowled out by Australia for just 147. Australia are yet to bat because the rest of the first day's play was called off because of rain. You're up to date with the latest headlines. We'll have more for you at 11.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Morning, everyone. Now, a year ago today, the first COVID-19 vaccine was administered to 90-year-old Margaret Keenan. Since then, over 80% of us have been double jabbed, and now the booster campaign is ramping up as well. As of today, 7 million more over 40s will be able to book their next injection.
Yes, well, our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, joins us now. He joins us from Lincoln. Will, are we at least prepared for this Christmas in terms of the vaccine rollout?
Good morning. Yes, it's a significant change compared to last year. If you can remember, around the 8th of December, before Margaret Keelan became the first person not only in Britain but in the world to have that Pfizer vaccine, just think about how different the world was. We were in that period, we were just about to go into the third national lockdown. We were going into various different forms of tiered system, depending on where you were across the country. You might not be able to see your friends and your family. You might not have been able to go down to your pub. But now, where we're at a year on from that vaccine, 51 million people in Britain have had their first dose, 46 million their second. And right now, that key number, that key phrase, getting people boosted, 20 million people. The aim is to offer everybody over 18 a booster jab before the end of January. Just to think about how much things have changed, those numbers just considerably show the differences. Part of where we're at now, despite having the vaccine programme, is of course still testing. It's a huge part of the plan for how the government is expecting to get through winter. As you say, I'm in Lincoln, just outside of the city, and here I'm joined by David Clark. He's one of the public health officers. You can see in the back we've got a bus, but it's not just a regular bus. You're not taking anybody to and from the shops. What's the purpose of this bus? What's it doing here in Lincoln?
So this bus is forming part of our outbreak response team for Lincolnshire. We can deploy it to high-risk areas. So that may be areas where we've got a lack of testing access. Like I say, we're quite rural in Lincolnshire, so we deploy it to areas that are of concern, areas that have got high case rates, areas linked to significant outbreaks, just to make sure that we can continue to provide access to testing to the population of Lincolnshire.
So people come here, they're out shopping, and then they just literally pop in and they get to do a test. What kind of testing is it that they get to do?
So there's two types. They can lateral flow test on site, so there's supervised testing on site, and they can also pick up their home test kits to be able to do at home as well.
And what's the significant difference between the different testing? We hear lateral flow testing, PCR testing. We've heard about it for so long throughout the year, but some people might still get confused. Which test is for which part of the COVID process?
So lateral flow testing is for anybody without symptoms. It's a way of checking whether or not we've got widespread COVID spreading asymptomatically across the population. Just to emphasise, if anybody does have any symptoms, no matter how mild, they need to book online and get a PCR test.
Fantastic. We're in Lincoln. It's quite rural, as you say. What's the situation at the moment? We've got this Omicron variant. We've got hundreds of cases now. I think it's about 400 based on the statistics from yesterday. I haven't had a chance to check today. Where are you at with cases, whether it's still the more dominant Delta variant, the Omicron variant, and how are you doing with vaccinations here in Lincolnshire?
So reassuringly, we've only got one confirmed case of Omicron so far in Lincolnshire. Our case rate is still under the national average. So I think for England, we're looking at a case rate around 480. Ours in Lincolnshire is around 460 at the moment. So we're trending slightly under where we are nationally. That said, we are increasing proportionally in line with the national average, and we expect to see that case rate go up in the coming days and weeks. With regards to vaccinations, we're in a good place in Lincolnshire. So we've got currently 85% of the adult population and now the over 12s that have all had the first dose. When we start looking at the second dose, reassuringly, over 90% of the over 50s have had the second dose, and the data is looking good for the booster as well.
Where we are now, we're getting into those final weeks of Christmas shopping. People are going to be starting to have their Christmas parties, their office parties. We know that we haven't heard anything about Christmas being cancelled as we did last year. What's the public health advice around celebrating Christmas, the things that we legally can do, but COVID is obviously still a significant part of the life that we do live, even though we have this large proportion of the population vaccinated?
So there's a few things on that. Firstly, I'd like to emphasise the personal responsibility and personal protection around making sure that individuals that do have access to the vaccine take that offer up. It's the best way to protect yourself. The best way to protect others is to access testing as per the bus, so make sure that we're testing regularly. As I've said previously, if individuals have symptoms, they need to make sure that they get a PCR test. And just remember the basics around hands, face space and fresh air. It's the key message as we head up towards Christmas.
David Clark from Lincolnshire County Council. It is such an exciting time to have Christmas back within our grasp. We know that this period last year, a lot of people were certainly excited about that. It would be only a few days away, a year ago, that the Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, would take the decision to stop Christmas. It's pretty fair to say that the cases are much lower, hospitalisations are much lower, and the death rate compared to where we were last year going into that really difficult winter, everything is much more promising, particularly with the vaccines. And that's worth remembering where it all started. A lot of the Christmas festivities that we are hopefully about to enjoy wouldn't be possible without this year of the vaccine. So the government advice still to get down and to get your vaccines. That's certainly what Lincolnshire County Council is encouraging people to do here as well today.
Well, thank you, Will, for bringing us that. Great stuff. Let's hope we do have a Christmas. Well, it can't be much worse than last Christmas, eh?
No, yeah, it was a bit of a washout. Well, it was more than a bit of a washout. It was pretty terrible, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, let's cry.
I'll be here on Christmas Day.
Were you? Saturday? Well,
yes.
What a treat.
There you go, you lucky people. Anyway, in October 2018, Jamal Khashoggi, a US-based Saudi journalist and a prominent critic of Saudi Arabia's government, walked into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and he never walked out. The journalist was brutally murdered, and his killing was widely covered, intensifying global criticisms of the government in Riyadh.
Now, police say a Saudi man suspected of involvement in the murder has been arrested in France. A police source confirmed that Khaled Aid Al-Otaibi was arrested at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris yesterday, and he's believed to be one of 26 Saudis wanted by Turkey over the killing.
Well, Sam Ashworth-Hayes is Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society, a neoliberal transatlantic foreign policy and national security think tank. Thank you very much for joining us. How significant is this, then? It's obviously, it's an arrest, isn't it, I suppose? What do you reckon will happen as a result of this?
It's going to be interesting. Obviously, the Saudi government have already said this is a clear case of mistaken identity. He's got nothing to do with it. He should be let go. The French are saying they're trying to confirm that the man is who they think he is, and that's the individual Turkey wants arrested. It comes at quite a politically awkward time because Macron has just been visiting Saudi Arabia to try and improve relations with the government there. So the fact that they've now just made this arrest are basically accusing someone of further involvement in this case when the Saudis think it's already a closed business is going to stir up quite a lot of trouble, I would imagine.
OK, yeah. I mean, I remember when this story broke and there were some absolutely harrowing details that came out of it, weren't there? What do you think this will do in terms of the reputation of the Saudi government? I mean, it's already pretty low, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I would imagine it's not going to add significantly to the reputational damage already done, but it's going to sort of make sure it's sort of front and foremost in everyone's mind again, if that makes sense. It's more sort of a refreshing of the case. I mean, we've already had this sort of UN investigation which said there's credible evidence to investigate the very highest levels of the Saudi government. That individuals should face sanctions, and obviously Washington declassified a CIA report basically accusing, again, the sort of leadership of the country of approving the assassination. So this is all stuff that's kind of there's nothing sort of particularly new in sort of the accusations of high level government involvement. But it's the first time that someone's basically been arrested outside of Saudi Arabia and therefore may face trial outside of Saudi Arabia.
Yes, sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say, so it would be whatever sort of emerges from that process would be the sort of the real reputational harm, I think.
And what is the likely outcome of this? Because I can see if this person does have information about why or how this thing was carried out and who was responsible. I can't imagine they're going to be allowed to say that quite freely, and they might be fearing for their own life if, you know, there was the people at the top of the Saudi government involved in all of this. So is there a realistic chance of justice actually being carried out properly here?
It's a really good question. I mean, there's also a question of what would happen to them in the event that, you know, the French determine this is the man they happen to want. Would he actually be extradited to Turkey, or would he sort of remain in France for a period? Obviously, the safety of the individual would be sort of paramount in any sort of prosecution, and I would imagine, you know, Turkey and France together would be able to work something out in order to at least ensure safety while custody. But yeah, as you say, it would be an interesting thing to see what if it's the man they think it is. What he'd be able to tell them and what he'd be willing to tell them.
No, Sam, thank you very much for taking the time to come on our show today. Sam Ashworth-Hayes there, of course, Director of Studies at the Henry Jackson Society. Yeah, I remember when this story broke, and some of the details in it were astonishing, and clearly the Turkish government knows everything that happened. I imagine most governments do now, but at the time it was bizarre, wasn't it? Video footage of Jamal Khashoggi going into the embassy in Turkey there, obviously never coming out, and there was, I mean, rumours of, you know, being injected, a bone saw being used and all this stuff. There was a huge hunt for his body, wasn't there? I can't remember if he ever actually found any of it, to be honest with you, but yeah, it was. I mean, it was staggering stuff, wasn't it? And it was a completely state-sponsored operation. And then also it was the fact that the Turkish government clearly had listening devices in the Saudi embassy.
Yeah, I mean,
straight away they knew what happened.
Yeah, it's a welcome development, I think, especially for his family. If somebody now that somebody has been arrested, and let's hope that justice will be administered properly, and we'll of course be bringing you the developments in all of that as we get them.
Indeed, we will. Right, so a transgender swimmer and a student at the University of Pennsylvania who'd spent 3 years competing as a man has smashed two US records, apparently. Who would have thought that?
Shock horror.
No way, no.
Leah Thomas, who you can see on the screen there, raced away from the other competitors on Sunday, finishing the 1,650-yard freestyle 30 seconds, 38 whole seconds ahead of her teammate. Her winning time of just under 16 minutes was less than 60 seconds off the world record. And it's the first season Leah Thomas, who was formerly named Will, has competed in the swimming, and as a transgender woman, that is. And currently, under the regulations, any transgender female athlete can take part in US college women's events if they have completed a year of testosterone suppression treatment.
Because clearly that makes all the difference.
Yes, so I am complete. I mean, it won't come as a surprise. I've probably spoken about this before, but I think
you're bang in favour of this kind of stuff, aren't you?
I'm complete. I think this is absurd. I mean, what the heck are we doing? How are we letting this happen? And how does anybody think this is fair? This idea that just because somebody's taken a year of testosterone suppression treatment, that somehow they're suddenly on a par. I mean, if you took testosterone suppression treatment, it wouldn't mean you're on a par as a woman with me, would it? I mean, nobody surely thinks. Offensive. Nobody surely thinks that is sensible. And there's also the other side of there'll be women who are competing in that race who have dedicated hours and hours and all their time trying to be the best swimmer in their female category. And then this person comes along who's clearly a man who's taken a year of suppression therapy, and suddenly he gets to be called the female champion of... I just think it's absurd.
It's almost worth it, though, isn't it, in a way? Because, you know, they might get a gold medal at the Olympics now.
Yeah.
You know, there was no chance of that happening before, was there? You know? I mean, you've got to really be committed to the cause, but...
Yeah, and what annoys me as well is that women can't do the same thing because men can join women's sports, and because they're men, because of fundamental biological differences, because they're stronger, they're faster, naturally, generally speaking, it means that they can compete against women, and relatively amateur men can, you know, beat women's records easily in sports. Women don't have the freedom to do the same thing, you know, for obvious reasons, because men will always still be, you know, considerably stronger and faster, generally speaking, and so we can't even retaliate almost and say, well, I'm going to join the men's and beat every man by taking some testosterone. It's absurd.
Maybe you could do it something like chess. You could do it that way, couldn't you? I suppose, maybe something. But no, I mean, I've got to be honest. So let us know what you think, obviously, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But if I had a daughter and she dedicated her entire life to being the best at swimming as she could possibly be, and, you know, she managed to get through to, like, Team USA trials or whatever, and then, you know, Will turns up and beats her, I think I'd be a bit miffed.
Yeah.
But,
let us know what you think. I'm looking forward to reading your views, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But moving on, a lucky mountaineer discovered some real-life hidden treasure left after a 1960s plane crash on Mont Blanc. The climber found a trove of treasure, precious gemstones, in 2013, kicking off an 8-year bid to track down the owners. But when the local council failed to find the dead owner's family, they opted to split the trove, landing the lucky explorer 127 grand in payouts.
Goodness me. I think that's fantastic. Well, the local mayor...
That is the dream, isn't it?
The local mayor praised the climber's integrity for turning in the jewels to the police, as is required by law. Would you turn them in?
Yeah, I also massively said Mount Blanc in the most English way possible.
Yeah, I did think that. I once ordered the moulet frites at a restaurant, so that didn't go down too well.
Frites.
Yeah. No, I'm not renowned for my pronunciation of foreign lexicon.
Yeah, but that's the dream, isn't it? You find treasure, because I always wonder what happens when people discover all these artefacts which are worth millions or whatever. I always wonder, hey, they're supposed to... They should get some of the cash for that because they found it.
I think I'd be inclined if I was on top of a mountain, right, and I discovered a plane crash that previously no one else has discovered, and there were some jewels there. At the very last thing I would do is turn them into the police. I'll just keep one because I'd quite like to be wealthy.
Yeah, but then you'd have to turn them in eventually if you want some money for them.
Nah, get them melted down. Anyway, right, OK. So enough about my criminal past there. But anyway, keep all your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Right, let's crack back on, because it's amazing, right? And loads of people are like, can you stop talking about Boris Johnson's Christmas party? We haven't actually spoken about it now for about 45 minutes, and everyone's still emailing in about it. So, look, basically saying it wasn't, as far as they're saying, it wasn't illegal. Someone's saying that they've heard that Boris Johnson wasn't even there. I'm tired of the speculation about will we, won't we have Christmas. This is from Gillian. Boris has become intoxicated with power. And that's her view, of course. So lots of you getting in touch. Clearly, war has broken out between the government and the civil service. Expect a deluge of spite. This is from Steve, I think, kind of speculating as to how all of this was leaked.
I do wonder what would happen if this was Labour, if it was the Labour government and this had happened, because I almost do get the impression a lot of the time that Boris Johnson, he can make lots of mistakes and he can still get away with it because, as I usually say, I think people just bake it into the fact when they vote for Boris and a Conservative government.
Yeah.
All this stuff is kind of baked in. They don't expect him to be squeaky clean. In fact, lots of people like the fact that perhaps he's not this squeaky clean character. And if it was Keir Starmer, I think the backlash would actually be more because he presents himself as this really noble, sensible man who could do no wrong. So, to be honest, the fact that it is the Conservatives and it's Boris might be serving them well when it comes to scandals like this.
I mean, I think the story there would be Keir Starmer held a party and people actually turned up to it. But there we go. Boris bashing again. Some people can't accept his popularity and some people want his job. And some people agreeing with you. This is Half, which is an interesting name. Thank you very much, Half, saying that they agree with you about Allegra Stratton. They don't think she comes across as particularly
Very smug, isn't she? Yeah.
Oh yeah, bear in mind as well, it's PMQs at midday, so you're going to want to stay tuned, stay locked in to GB News for that, because look, it is going to be big. You imagine that Keir Starmer's going to call for Boris to go. Boris is not going to go anywhere, and then that'll go back and forth for about an hour.
So keep all your thoughts coming in to us, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to more of those very shortly, but first, let's give you the weather and a little break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Storm Barra may be now easing, but it stays windy through the rest of today with further showers or, in some places, prolonged rain. But there will be some drier periods. Barra is still centred across the UK, but it's filling. It's becoming less severe. Nevertheless, strong winds continue to rotate around that low, particularly around the peripheries of it, northeast Scotland into parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest. And it's for West Wales as well as the southwest where the strongest wind gusts will be this afternoon, 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts, risk of disruption. And further bands of showers and rain affecting northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Western England and Wales. Prolonged rain in places. So feeling quite cold where we've got the rain coming through, where we've got that strong wind, highs of just 8 Celsius. But there will be some drier weather. The Midlands, East Anglia, South East England, Western Scotland, the favoured spots for some drier and brighter interludes at times through the day and overnight. Clearing skies across parts of northern UK in particular, with lighter winds eventually will lead to a touch of frost in places, say for northeast England, parts of central Scotland. Otherwise, lots of cloud and further showers coming and going, one or two making their way further east as we start off Thursday. But eventually, by the afternoon, things do start to brighten up. Cloudy initially in the east, but by the afternoon, sunny spells coming through. Whilst a reversal of fortunes further west, it turns cloudy with areas of rain moving in by mid-afternoon. And milder air returns to the southwest, 12 Celsius here, whilst it stays cold, where we've got the brighter weather further east. The cloud and rain make their way across the country during the evening. Some mountain snow for Scotland, followed by showers, and those showers will continue into Friday, particularly across western parts of the country, but there'll be some sunshine in between. And Saturday sees another area of rain move in from the west. It will also turn milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, Monday to Thursday from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. We don't lecture to you or try to tell you what to think. We do a deep delve into a topic with views from across the range of debate, therefore leaving you, the viewer, to make up your own mind. Join me, Alex Phillips, for the afternoon agenda on GB News, 4 till 6, Monday to Thursday.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints over a drink we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Morning everyone, you're watching To The Point on GB News. It's me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki as well, and we are here for the next hour or so with loads of massive stories for you.
Yes, and we'd like to hear your thoughts as well on everything we're talking about today, so get in touch at gbviews@gbnews.uk and we'll read out your views throughout the next hour. But first, let's give you the latest news.
Good morning, I'm Paul Hawkins. Our top stories at 11. In the past half an hour, the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has said the government didn't break COVID rules after a leaked video showed Downing Street staff joking about an alleged Christmas party during lockdown last year. The video leaked to ITV News shows Boris Johnson's former press secretary Allegra Stratton answering questions from Downing Street staff pretending to be journalists 4 days after the alleged party happened while the country was under lockdown restrictions.
The Prime Minister condone having a Christmas?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not. Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
Is this recorded? This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Downing Street says there was no party, but Labour's Sir Keir Starmer is calling on the PM to come clean and apologise. The Met Police are also looking into it, but the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, has defended the government and Number 10.
As to alleged events in Number 10, I don't know the detail of what happened. I know that the Prime Minister's spokesman answered those questions in detail yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be further discussion of that issue.
Why should British citizens trust an administration that does not follow the rules on COVID?
Well, we do follow the rules on COVID.
Elsewhere this morning, one of the UK's top COVID advisors has warned another nationwide lockdown cannot be ruled out. Professor Neil Ferguson says the Omicron variant is concerning, but it's not fully known what its impact will be. He suggested people may be told to work from home with the new variant set to take over from the Delta strain before Christmas. Also from today, if you're over 40 in England, you can now book your COVID booster jab 3 months after receiving your second vaccine. This change makes an extra 7 million people now eligible for the third jab. It's exactly a year ago to the day that the first coronavirus vaccine was given in the United Kingdom. Official figures show 101 extra cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, with the total now reaching 437. Roughly 1,000 properties are without power as Storm Barra sweeps across the country. Power cuts follow Storm Arwen, which caused catastrophic damage to electricity networks. Flood warnings have been issued across the UK and a yellow weather warning for wind is in place across the west coast of Wales and southwest England until 6 p.m. More ice, wind and rain is expected elsewhere. The Met Office says Barra shouldn't cause as much chaos as Storm Arwen. Boris Johnson and other Western leaders say they will work together to encourage Russia to back down over what they are calling threatening behaviour towards Ukraine. Their talks follow a meeting between the US and Russian presidents in which Joe Biden warned Vladimir Putin of severe sanctions if Russia invades Ukraine. An estimated 100,000 Russian troops are now gathered on the Ukrainian border. Elsewhere this morning, Germany has a new leader. Olaf Scholz has taken over from Angela Merkel after winning a clear majority of 395 votes in the country's parliament. The 63-year-old lawyer will lead a centre-left government ending 16 years of moderately conservative rule. He'll be sworn in at a ceremony later today. And England have got off to a terrible start on day one of the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Despite winning the toss and deciding to bat, they were bowled out for just 147. Opener Rory Burns was bowled with the first ball of the match. Captain Joe Root also made naught, whilst Ben Stokes scored just 5. Australia are yet to bat because the rest of the first day's play was called off because of rain. You're up to date with the latest headlines. We'll have more stories for you at 11:30. Now it's back to The Point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GBNews with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys, and we've got an hour full of today's big stories and lots of discussion on the issues you're talking about as well. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, well, Boris Johnson is expected to receive a grilling in the Commons during Prime Minister's questions at 12 o'clock, after, of course, you'll have all seen it by now. That video emerged, which appeared to show anyway, his press secretary joking about a Christmas party while they were obviously illegal last year. Well, having a bit of a laugh about it as well. Where do you stand on that issue?
Yes, and the European Commission will meet later to discuss plans to encourage inclusivity within the EU. Their plan would amend one of the founding documents of the EU and include hate speech as a formal crime. Is the EU overstepping the mark, and should nation-states be able to make their own laws on hate crime? We'll discuss.
Yes, we will indeed. Now, Storm Barra hit the UK last night and is continuing into today, causing disruption after some houses still hadn't regained power after Storm Arwen. Has anyone actually heard from Mark White? Because he was out there. He was out there yesterday, covered in snow, and he's not answering his phone. So fingers crossed, Mark's okay.
We are joking, by the way.
Yeah,
well, he is. We have all of that coming up for you, and much more as well across the programme. And you can get in touch as usual on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Very split inbox today in relation to the Boris Johnson and the Christmas party last year, but we'll be getting stuck into that very shortly.
Yes, we will indeed. Well, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is expected to face a grilling today in the Commons. It comes after a video emerged of former Downing Street Press Secretary Allegra Stratton joking about holding a Christmas party at Number 10, just 4 days after the event supposedly took place. Press room staff are seen asking her mock questions during a rehearsal for a TV briefing. You can have a look at it now.
I've just seen reports on Twitter that there was a Downing Street Christmas party on Friday night. Do you recognise those reports?
I went home. Hold on.
Would the Prime Minister condone having a Christmas party?
What's the answer?
I don't know.
It wasn't a party, it was cheese and wine.
Just be clear, it's not.
Is cheese and wine all right?
No.
It was a business meeting.
I'm joking.
This is recorded. This fictional party was a business meeting. And it was not socially distanced.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there, isn't there, really?
There is a lot. It's just there's the smugness for me, I think, that...
Yeah, it is. It's also the fact that it's also like,
course.
what world do these people live in where, well, it wasn't a party, it's just a spot of cheese and wine. Just a couple of glasses of port with the chums, bit of grouse shooting, just standard stuff. You know, I mean, come on. It's a party, isn't it? You've had a party.
Yeah. Well, the Downing Street staff are alleged to have thrown this boozy Christmas party on December the 18th last year. An initial report said 40 to 50 people were in attendance. And at the time, and this is why it's quite controversial at the moment, London was in Tier 3 restrictions, which forbid households mixing indoors at the time.
Yeah.
So that's why people are saying, well, it's blatant hypocrisy, although lots of you...
Well, what were the police doing? The police are there.
Well,
the police are there all the time. You've got 2 police officers or 1 police officer guarding the door. If you want to get into Downing Street, you've got to walk through a hub full of police officers.
Yeah.
There'll be security inside. But they get out of jail, for want of a better phrase here, because the police don't retrospectively investigate breaches of lockdown.
Yeah, also they say, right? So Sir Keir Starmer has called on the Prime Minister to come clean and apologise for the shameful lies and jokes. That's what he said. He used the word shameful ahead of Prime Minister's questions this afternoon, which we'll be bringing you in about an hour. But before then, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, is live in Downing Street for us now. Darren, what are the Conservatives saying about this leaked footage?
Well, interestingly, it depends who you listen to. MPs themselves are pretty flipping furious, it must be said, this morning. Even those that are normally quite supportive of Boris Johnson, concerned about how Downing Street has managed to get themselves yet again into a mess of their own making, it must be said, to a large degree. There is fear, I think, within the party that this, in some ways, may well be worse than the Barnard Castle incident, of course, involving Dominic Cummings last year, that did do some damage to the government, not least of all because it happened after the fallout from that infamous incident, but also it's just the tone of that video, as you guys picked up on, the fact that the Prime Minister's press secretary and others were laughing, a sense from critics at least that they were well laughing at you and I and those people who were abiding by the restrictions last Christmas. We have to remember, when that press conference, or that mock press conference was held, on that day, over 600 people died of coronavirus in this country. The day the party took place, which was 4 days earlier, 500 people died. There are a lot of people who did not see loved ones in hospitals or care homes who are understandably pretty upset about this. Now, Downing Street have repeatedly argued that they have not broken any rules. They've even inferred that there wasn't a party at all. Now, that seems, frankly, at the moment, from where we are, a bit ridiculous, and the questions will come and come, I fear. Interestingly, also this morning, we didn't hear from any ministers. Normally, government ministers do a round of interviews on TV and radio channels. That did not happen. Liz Truss, though, the Foreign Secretary, has been out and about in Chatham House today, and unsurprisingly was asked this very question about whether government were or had broken the rules.
Look, it's in everybody's interest that we follow the COVID rules and that we boost our vaccinations as soon as we practically can. And there have been steps up in the booster campaign, and that's obviously very important to deal with the new variant. As to alleged events in number 10, I don't know the detail of what happened. I know that the Prime Minister's spokesman answered those questions in detail yesterday, and I'm sure there'll be further discussion of that issue. But my focus has been, as I'm sure you imagine, on foreign policy. I spent last week in Sweden, in Latvia and Estonia, working to challenge Russian aggression with our allies. We have the G7 coming up in Liverpool this weekend, and of course I'm here today outlining our foreign policy approach at Chatham House. And on the subject of the FCDO, there was...
Just address the trust issue, which is really crucial and important because it matters for all voters and all citizens. Why should British citizens trust an administration that does not follow the rules on COVID?
Well, we do follow the rules on COVID. I'm saying in that particular issue that you raised, James, I'm not aware of the precise circumstances, and I know the Prime Minister's spokesman has addressed that issue.
Right, yes, well, obviously she's, well, I don't know, digging or evading slightly, maybe, some of those questions there, Darren?
Yeah, I think to a degree, you know, as always with these things, government ministers are sometimes put in a pretty awkward situation in which they have to defend things that they're not terribly aware of or may not be properly informed about. I think that's one of the reasons that, frankly, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, who wasn't in government at the time, probably said, well, you know what, guys, I'm not going to do this morning round of interviews today because I don't frankly know what I'm necessarily defending. And we must say that, is this having cut through with the public? Well, you speak to MPs, and again, not just Labour or Lib Dem MPs, but Conservative MPs, and they are starting to notice that people are pretty angry about this. Of course, even Anton Deck, famously last night, decided to bring it up on I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. So I think the government will be pretty concerned. It's going to be a very, very, very tricky Prime Minister's question time for Boris Johnson in less than an hour. A real political test for him, but also must be said for Keir Starmer too, about whether he can land some blows on the Prime Minister. But big questions about whether they should come clean or not, about who attended this party, if it happens, and why, for the last week, has Downing Street essentially been evading some of those big questions.
Yes, indeed. But I believe that there's also the government considering, obviously, Plan B, aren't they, in terms of restrictions? Is that right? Can you just bring us up to date with that, please?
Yeah, so this is another big significant story today. Some critics might suggest potentially a distraction, but it is clearly rooted in worrying signs that's emerging about the Omicron variants. Increasingly, it looks like it is more transmissible than the Delta variant. Suggestions this morning from some top scientists that it could become the dominant variant before Christmas, and it looks now that the government is going to act on all of this. We're expecting meetings to be held later on today here in Downing Street, potentially a press conference from the Prime Minister and a statement in the House of Commons from Sajid Javid. What are we likely to hear? Well, that we may well be planning to move to Plan B. That means advice or being told to work from home again for those that can. It could mean the introduction of vaccine passports for big mass events like theatres or football games. It does sound a little bit like deja vu that we are here yet again, this time in the lead up to Christmas. We all know that Christmas parties have been cancelled, affecting pubs and restaurants. Now, there are no suggestions that we are potentially going to move to any type of lockdown scenario, or that even people might be told to limit their social meetings, but that there will be further restrictions put in place in the days to come. And that's going to be difficult for people, and potentially even more difficult from a government that is asking people to follow advice and rules when it is entirely possible, we don't know, but entirely possible, that this time last year they were breaking those rules themselves.
Indeed. Darren, thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. And we will, of course, be bringing you Prime Minister's questions live in about an hour's time here on GB News, and we'll see what the Prime Minister has to say. I'm sure he'll be facing a grilling from members of Parliament at that questioning. But let's move on now and speak to Stephen Pound, the former Labour MP for Ealing, who joins us now down the line. Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for joining us again. Always great to have you. Just give me your reaction to all of this. Do you think it is this massive breach of trust? And do you think Boris Johnson will recover from any breach of trust that the public feel that he has? Because our inbox is quite split on this morning.
In all honesty, I think the Teflon's come off now. It's because it's not just this. You know, the old thing about sorrows come not as spies, but in battalions. What Boris has got now, apart from the fact next week is the second anniversary of his great victory, which, you know, obviously everybody was saying, what have you achieved in 2 years? But also PMQs today is make or break. Sometimes PMQs is important, sometimes it's absolutely irrelevant. The first question on PMQs today is from Nicola Richards. Now, she's a Tory MP who won Tom Watson's old seat up in West Bromwich. Archetypal red wall. If Nicola Richards stands up and says, you know, I'm just, you know, very, very unhappy about this, it's not good enough, then I think it could be very, very difficult. And then the next person who's speaking up for the Tories, Fiona Bruce, is a sort of very, very evangelical, you know, very, very sincere, committed Christian. She's going to be horrified by this. So Boris is going to be facing friendly fire. What's interesting is this afternoon is what we call an opposition day. It's the day when the opposition party, in this case the Labour Party, excuse me, can talk about anything they want to. And the Labour Party have chosen as their opposition date today the Great Rail Fail. It's all about the cancellation of the Leeds arm of HS2. I'm just wondering whether that might actually segue into this, because you've got the Afghanistan issue, you've got the business about Kerry having influence to bring dogs back rather than people. We got the inflation is going up. We got Omicron. There's a huge battalions of problems here for the Prime Minister. And I'm starting to think that he may not actually survive this. I always thought he did. I always thought it was just water off a duck's back. I thought the people, you know, the old Donald Trump thing, I could, you know, shoot somebody on East 22nd Street, nobody would mind. I think with Boris Johnson, I have to say, I think he's in the departure lounge, and I think that they're playing, you know, the last goodbye now.
When you say you think he might not survive this, is what you're saying you think he might resign, or do you think he'll be actually pushed out by some of his backbenchers? Because that seems like wishful thinking on your part, I have to say.
Look, the Tories are the most brutally ruthless and efficient political party in Europe. The Labour Party has never, ever sacked a leader, never. They've always resigned. Even when Ramsay MacDonald was the leader of the Labour Party and he went into coalition with the Tories, we never sacked him. In the Tory party, they have what they call the men in the grey suits. And, you know, Labour Party is grey boiler suits, obviously. But what happens at the 22 committee, people like Graham Brady, will come down and he will go. Because don't forget, they defenestrated Margaret Thatcher in November 1990. They got rid of Theresa May. They've got rid of, William Hague, Ian Duncan Smith, you name it. They've chucked more of them under trains, and than, well, to be honest, than the Labour Party's had prime ministers. So it will happen, because if there's one thing that absolutely unites every single jot and tittle of the Tory party, it's power. They've got to have power. They need it. They must have it. And the reason why I think this, Nicola Richards' question today is so important, the first question on PMQs, is because she is a red wall Tory. She took Tom Watson's Labour seat, which nobody thought would ever go in a million years. And what she says matters. As soon as people like her, all these people in the north, all these people who won the Labour seats in the north and the northeast, the minute they say, up with this, we will not put, then I cannot see how Boris Johnson's position is tenable. There's 2 or 3 people who could actually take over. One of the things about chucking your leader under the train is you've got to have an alternative engine drive. And in this case, we've got, it's not just Rishi Sunak, it's not just Liz Truss, it's not just Jeremy. There's quite a few of them.
The thing is that it has to be someone who wasn't at that party.
And I think that will unite the Tories.
Yeah, if that party did happen, they can't sack Boris and replace him with someone else who was at that party, can they? So as long as any of the bigwigs were there, then he's relatively safe in that regard, I would have thought.
Well, I'm sorry. The Tory party can. I mean, the tradition was that they show you to the library with a pearl-handled revolver and a glass of whiskey, and you commit suicide. But that doesn't happen. I don't think it ever did happen. But it was always, we're just showing him into the library with the glass of whiskey and the pearl-handled revolver. Look, they could get rid of Boris Johnson quite easily. They've done it before. And look what happened with Margaret Thatcher. Do you honestly think, I mean, you're probably too young, but who on earth remembers the power that Margaret Thatcher had in 1990? Who would have thought for a minute that she could have been thrown under the bus? Nobody thought it. It can happen to Boris. If it could happen to Thatcher, it can certainly happen to Boris.
Thank you very much for imparting your views. It is going to be gripping stuff, PMQs. There's a lot of people here. Cheers, that's Stephen Pound, by the way. Nice to see him. He's normally on with Andrew Bridgen, isn't he? They're famous sparring partners, those two, which is good stuff. But look, some people here, and Tony makes a good point. We're nearly at war with Russia, and all we're concerned about is Boris's party from last year. Pathetic.
That's not all we're concerned about.
No, it's not all we're concerned about. It's not all we're concerned about, Tony. How dare you? But it's a really tough one for me, this, just personally, because I don't really care that Boris Johnson's had a party. But I do care about the fact that he told me I couldn't do anything. I do care about the impact that had on certain elderly relatives, for example, the kind of loneliness that inflicted on people. I care about the fact that people couldn't have a proper funeral for their loved ones.
Absolutely.
Weddings were cancelled. And so it is that hypocrisy. And, it does feel like there's a lot of other stuff out there, and there is, but this is very much the big story of the day, whether you like it or not, I'm afraid, because we've got PMQs.
Yes, and another big story, which we'll be breaking very shortly, is Boris Johnson is set to announce more COVID restrictions, so we will be bringing you those as well as those come in. But after the break, journalist and author Ella Whelan joins us to discuss the European Commission and their plans to introduce hate crime legislation within the EU. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Storm Barra may be now easing, but it stays windy through the rest of today with further showers or, in some places, prolonged rain. But there will be some drier periods. Barra is still centred across the UK, but it's filling. It's becoming less severe. Nevertheless, strong winds continue to rotate around that low, particularly around the peripheries of it, northeast Scotland into parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest. And it's for West Wales as well as the southwest where the strongest wind gusts will be this afternoon, 65-mile-per-hour wind gusts, risk of disruption. And further bands of showers and rain affecting northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Western England and Wales. Prolonged rain in places. So feeling quite cold where we've got the rain coming through, where we've got that strong wind, highs of just 8 Celsius. But there will be some drier weather. The Midlands, East Anglia, South East England, Western Scotland, the favoured spots for some drier and brighter interludes at times through the day and overnight. Clearing skies across parts of northern UK in particular, with lighter winds eventually will lead to a touch of frost in places, say for North East England, parts of central Scotland. Otherwise, lots of cloud and further showers coming and going, 1 or 2 making their way further east as we start off Thursday. But eventually, by the afternoon, things do start to brighten up. Cloudy initially in the east, but by the afternoon, sunny spells coming through. Whilst a reverse of fortunes further west, it turns cloudy with areas of rain moving in by mid-afternoon. And the milder air returns to the southwest, 12 Celsius here, whilst it stays cold, where we've got the brighter weather further east. The cloud and rain make their way across the country during the evening. Some mountain snow for Scotland, followed by showers, and those showers will continue into Friday, particularly across western parts of the country, but there'll be some sunshine in between. And Saturday sees another area of rain move in from the west. It will also turn milder.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. Just want to go, before we move on to what the European Union is doing to essentially clamp down on free speech, just to some of the reaction to the interview that we did there about Boris Johnson's alleged Christmas party, because I think it's really interesting to gauge where you're at with this, right? So we've had Danny get in touch to say, I massively care about this. It was essentially an illegal gathering and they're all hypocrites. And immediately below that, Sam's been in touch to say, I couldn't care less about this, move on, basically. And so it really is a big divide. And I think what we're going to see today is going to be quite interesting, which is how terminal or otherwise is this for Boris Johnson? It would be amazing, I think, wouldn't it, if after everything, it's a Christmas party that brings him down.
Yeah, and I don't think it will be,
I don't think
to be honest with you.
He's not going anywhere, is he?
I mean, yeah, he's not, is he? And we have seen worse breaches of COVID rules by people in his government. Of course, they have resigned and they've left. They have left now. But, I mean, he's the Prime Minister, isn't he? And is it clear whether he was personally at this party?
Yeah, well,
Because
that's
I think
it.
somebody said you're assuming he was, but
Yeah.
do we know whether he was actually there?
Well, this is it, isn't it? This is it. We don't. Well, look, we don't know anything really at the moment, other than kind of leaked reports and this, that, and the other. There doesn't seem to be any massive concrete proof of anything. But yeah,
What we do know is that footage that we were showing you of Allegra Stratton, who's the former press secretary, just doesn't look good at all.
Yeah, well, this is, Maureen's been in touch. Thank you, Maureen. All this kerfuffle about a fictitious Christmas party at Downing Street 1 year ago just reinforces the fact that the media, in particular the BBC, not so Maureen, will believe anything. So there you go.
It's not fictitious. They have admitted that a party took place, so that has been admitted by them.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. And I wonder if there is some truth in this, actually. Mike's been on and say the alleged party is in number 10 is a Westminster row and it's not being discussed by the general public. And if the Labour Party want my vote, they're going to have to come up with some policies. And this is the thing, isn't it? Because whether or not the public want Boris Johnson to go over this, I'm not... Look, I'm not massively convinced that the people of Hartlepool are talking about this down the pub right now. I'm not sure they probably shouldn't be at the pub today, it's only 11:30. But yeah, I'm not overly convinced that the people of Altrincham or wherever are massively bothered about this, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, but I think it will make people less likely, perhaps, a lot of people less likely to follow any... Because Boris Johnson, by the way, is set to reveal some more COVID restrictions that will be coming into force. And I think that these two stories alongside each other might make people less inclined to actually follow whatever new restrictions he tries to bring in place.
No, absolutely spot on. And I actually wonder whether or not maybe if Boris Johnson has had a Christmas party, if he was there, and if it broke all the rules, actually, that might be quite a good thing for us, because I do wonder whether or not now he might think again about, introducing rules and regs, because, as you said, I suspect that if this is true and it's proven to be true, many people at home now will not be following any rules that Boris Johnson decides to lay out.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's move away from that for a bit and talk about the EU, because their commission is set to amend a founding text to forcefully enshrine the rights of minorities and fight violence and hate against those minorities, which include women and those in the LGBT community.
Well, this plan, which could be signed off today, would criminalise hate speech and violence through EU-wide rules. Now, the rules would enable the Commission to put forward laws to punish misogyny and anti-LGBTQ plus abuse online and offline.
Yeah.
Well, it's just one of those interesting issues again, isn't it? We've had things like that rear its head over here about hate speech and what is hate speech,
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? Because there are clear-cut levels of hate, which are, violence, etc., that kind of thing. It's very clear-cut when somebody has committed a racially aggregated act of violence or whatever. Often it's clear-cut. But what does hate speech mean? Because does it entail, for example, being critical of those in the LGBTQ movement, for example? Because some people do consider that as hate speech. What we were talking about earlier about a trans swimmer who's beaten the records of these women, biological female swimmers, and it's me saying that I don't think that should be allowed, that trans men should be allowed to compete with biological... Is that hate speech? So I don't think the EU should be enforcing this across sort of all the nations under the EU. I think it should be left to nation states to decide.
Well, I think it should be left to nation states to decide, but it's a really tricky one, because I think there was one recently, it was only a couple of weeks ago actually, where some female students at Cambridge University said that when a photographer, an event that they were having, said, can some men help these women off stage, and apparently they felt threatened by this and stuff. So if this is where the bar is now, what is hate speech to some people? Can you say anything? It's a concern, but at the same time, obviously, has to be some stuff in place, doesn't it, to stop people, being violent towards people and stuff like that,
Yeah, just let us know what you think. GB Views at gbnews.uk. But let's go to the news for now.
Good morning. Your top stories at 11:30. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has defended the government after a video showed Downing Street staff joking about an alleged Christmas party during lockdown last year. The video leaked to ITV News shows Boris Johnson's former press secretary Allegra Stratton answering questions during a mock press briefing 4 days after the alleged party happened, whilst the country was under lockdown restrictions. Liz Truss says the government does follow COVID rules. Downing Street maintains there was no party. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson is considering new COVID restrictions, including orders to work from home and vaccine passports to manage the Omicron variant. Downing Street sources insist no decisions have been made, but there is widespread speculation that further measures could be imminent. From today, if you're over 40 years old in England, you can now book your COVID booster jab 3 months after receiving your second dose of the vaccine. It follows official figures showing 101 additional cases of the Omicron variant in the UK, with the total now reaching 437. Roughly 1,000 properties are without power as Storm Barra sweeps across the country. A yellow weather warning for wind is in place across the west coast of Wales and southwest England until 6 p.m. Meanwhile, more ice, wind and rain is expected elsewhere. And England got off to a terrible start on day one of the first Ashes test in Brisbane. Despite winning the toss and electing to bat, they were bowled out by Australia for just 147. The Aussies are yet to bat because the rest of the first day's play was called off because of rain. You're up to date with the latest news headlines. It's back to the point.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, Storm Barra is not quite done yet with the UK, with more ice, wind and rain on the way, with flooding expected as well in some parts. A yellow weather warning remains in place across England for gale-force winds and dozens of flood alerts in the south coast.
Indeed. About 3,200 homes in North East Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales have lost power. Train services have been disrupted, buildings have been damaged and trees have been felled by the winds. Well, one person in Dorset as well sadly died after being swept from a bridge by floodwater. Goodness me.
Yes, while GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie is with us now. Dougie, talk us through why Storm Barra seems to have hit so hard and what damage it has done so far.
Well, first of all, welcome to Strangford Lough, so called by the Vikings Strong Fjord because of the currents that are here and how open it is to the elements. In Ireland as a whole, we are a pretty hardy bunch, but we do get beautiful summers, but we pay for it during the winter. Now, we had 80 miles per hour winds here last night, and in fact, where I'm standing now, the water was lashing clean out over the walls here with very high tides onto the roads. I was driving down this morning and there's quite a lot of seaweed in and around the road itself, the council here clearing that up. But overall, Northern Ireland has actually got away with it to a certain extent where structural damage is concerned. There is homes without power, but it's in the Republic of Ireland, that west coast right down from Donegal into Sligo and towards Galway, where Barra made land. It did quite a lot of harm there, and structural harm, especially to the electric network. Now, the electric boards here are quite well versed and rehearsed in putting power back, but this comes just off the back of Storm Arwen, which hit exactly the same area and left a lot of people without power. So this morning, well, between last night and this morning, there has been about 50,000 in total on the island of Ireland that has been without power. Most of that is now restored, and the services are working quite hard.
Yes, indeed. I must say, it looks absolutely stunning where you are. I'm jealous. Although you do have to stand outside in the elements, don't you? I was worried when you popped up that we'd sent yet another VJ out to go and get battered by a storm. But actually, it does look all right where you are at the minute, Diggy. You're getting away with it a little bit.
I am actually, and behind me, it shows you how well prepared we are for storms here. Behind me is usually loads and loads of yachts and boats moored here. I think there's only 3 here this morning. The rest of them were brought out of the water about a week ago. My daughters actually come here during the summer to paddleboard right out to the islands. I come here to fish for mackerel. It is a beautiful spot. There's a lovely restaurant just over the other side. And after this, don't feel sorry for the VJ. I might nip over there for a sneaky fry.
Hey, there he is. Good stuff. Well, you've earned it anyway. I mean, you'll need to go in and warm up, you know, that's right. But Diggy, thank you very much. Diggy Beats there reporting on the latest storm Barra from Northern Ireland, which looks like it's largely got away with it, really, unlike massive parts of Scotland. Just to get another plea, if anyone has heard from Mark White, let us know. Hopefully he's still not out there.
Yes. Anyway, I hear he's on his way back.
Is he?
I guess he survived.
Oh, God, he's thawed.
Yes, 1 in 10 UK families, moving on now, about 3 million households are facing a cost of living crunch this winter, unable to cover even basic bills such as food and heating, according to Citizens' advice. The scale, complexity and impact of poverty on children has been compounded by recent economic circumstances, and with the freezing temperatures brought on by Storm Barra, families facing an even tougher struggle to keep warm.
Indeed. Well, our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley has spoken to a baby bank charity in Leeds who is struggling to keep its doors open after a surge in demand for its services has quadrupled since last year.
With winter approaching, rising living costs, cuts to benefits and job losses caused by the pandemic are a huge concern for parents. And despite the cold setting in, some families are choosing between whether to heat their homes or put food on the table. In Leeds, more than 30,000 children are living in poverty, and the charity Leeds Baby Bank, which supports families in need across the city, is fighting to keep its doors open this Christmas after seeing a huge surge in demand from cash-strapped parents.
You name it, in terms of additional costs coming at families right now, they're coming in all areas. So petrol is £1.50, £1.60 a litre. Gas prices, you're seeing, gas companies going bust and gas prices through the roof. Shopping, we're seeing shopping weekly bills increasing and a reduction in support from universal credit and benefits. So it feels like every area of something that could be pressurised, the pressure's piling on for families right now. If you've got the essentials, we see you've got the foundations to help your child thrive. Now, if you haven't got those essentials, you're in a crisis position. So we're helping a number of areas of life, whether that's sleeping, well-being, nutrition, just keeping warm. Those basics that, unfortunately, families are facing crisis in the situation.
Volunteers at the charity provide a lifeline through packaging basic essentials such as nappies, formula, clothes and toys for children aged from birth to 5 years old.
Well, it's really sad, isn't it? I feel really emotional when you can't beat these people. I've got nothing at all, and you have, and they really benefit from it, and they're really grateful. Yeah, I'm quite surprised, really, how many people that there are out in the Leeds area that are needing things. Yeah, you know, until you come to do this particular role, you don't know, what's going on out there.
As well as the national pinch to pockets currently being felt across the UK, the increase in birth rates in Leeds has compounded child poverty in the city.
It's absolutely the impact of 10 years of austerity followed by a global pandemic has meant that a huge number of children and families are living in poverty. And also in Leeds, our birth rate's rising the fastest in the areas of highest deprivation. So of the 33 wards in the city, the one with the highest level of deprivation is also the one with the most children. So we've got a lot, even though Leeds is an affluent city, we have a lot of children living in poverty. It's disgraceful, really, that we need Leeds Baby Bank, but thank goodness they are there because they're an absolute lifeline for so many children and families. And the council's really proud to work with them and really proud that they're, these amazing group of people in our city that provide such fantastic services for families.
Even though child poverty was on the rise before the beginning of the pandemic, its scale, complexity and impact on children is set to worsen as the cold sets in and bills continue to soar through rising inflation. It's sadly going to be a tough Christmas for many this year, with grateful people to the charities out there that continue to provide for those most in need. Anna Riley for GB News.
Yes, thank you very much, Anna, for bringing us that report. So it is worth remembering as well, I think, isn't it, at Christmas? Hopefully everyone is, preparing for a good Christmas and a nice Christmas and we all have fun. Goodness knows we need it after the year and a bit we've had. But it is also worth remembering that there are a lot of people out there who are in a desperate state. And I suppose, it is time for giving. If you can give anything, then maybe that will be a place where you could donate some stuff.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's finish off on a lighter note. Despite Omicron fears and talks about the Prime Minister's Plan B restrictions, we are still, for now at least, allowed to have a Christmas party this year. But how do we plan the perfect party? And the important question on everyone's lips will be, what do we drink at Christmas? Well, let's see some of those concerns. Richard Sager is the UK General Manager of Neo Cocktails, a cocktail expert, some would say, and joins us now. Richard, are you?
Good morning.
There he is.
Great. Hi, I've actually seen some adverts for your company on my Instagram, and it's quite fast. You do cocktails quite differently, don't you?
We do, yeah. So NEO stands for Needs Ice Only. We prepare pre-crafted, bar-quality cocktails. We have a full menu of cocktails that all of our consumers can visit our website, mix and match to build their own unique cocktail bar. They come in these little CD cases. We were founded by children of the 80s who love CDs. And then when you're ready, you simply shake the cocktail, make sure you've got a glass full of ice, pinch the corner, and do the tear and do the pour. And there is the cocktail.
Right. I'm working.
It just means that you can have.
I'm on Christmas Day. I'm on Christmas Day, and I'd be. Hey, look, I'll take one for the team here. I'm happy to drink some of them if you send them in for free. I'll do that for you, mate. I would. But no, seriously, I think that's a fantastic idea. What flavours have you got?
We have over 20 cocktails on our menu, including the classics such as Cosmopolitan, Mai Tai, Daiquiri, Manhattans, Old Fashions, and also some signature cocktails that our master mixologist, Patrick Pistolesi, has prepared. And they're fabulous. Patrick's the founder of Drink Kong. Last night, Drink Kong was awarded the 19th best bar in the world. So you can be assured of the mixology expertise from Patrick and the quality of the cocktails from Neo.
And of course, we are speaking to you in the lead up to the festive season, and people will now be shopping, trying to get the drinks in for Christmas. So what do you recommend people drink? And actually, there are lots of people like me recently who have been trying to drink far less and actually trying to go teetotal. So what can those people drink as well? Can they still enjoy cocktails?
I think they can enjoy cocktails, and I think that's why we've got such a broad menu. We don't want people to be restricted to one or two choices. We want them to be able to choose their favourites, but also to explore new cocktails that they haven't tried previously. And if you're looking to drink a little bit less or be teetotal, we also have alcohol-free cocktails on our menu because we've seen that these are increasing in importance. And so we made the decision to make 10 or 15% of our bar menu alcohol-free cocktails.
Stuff. Well, look, thank you very much. And yes, it looks like it's going to be a good Christmas round at your house anyway, that's for sure. But I was deadly serious, so if you do send me some free cocktails, we'll drink them.
Yes,
Right.
you absolutely will. Well, let's finish with your views, because they have been coming in thick and fast. And there's been a lot of splits, hasn't there, in terms of Boris Johnson and the Christmas party we've been reporting on all morning. Some people saying they're not bothered at all that the Prime Minister and some senior number 10 people had this party last year when it was illegal. London was in Tier 3 to have a party. Other people are saying he should actually go, that this is a disgrace because they weren't able to see their loved ones at Christmas.
Lots of you are trying to raise the point about who's actually leaked this video and what does that really say? Could it potentially be someone from the civil service? Could it be someone from Boris Johnson's inner team? Is he at war with the civil service? Is that what it says? And this is exactly what Tony's saying. To me, the more pressing point is who leaked this video. We do not need civil servants doing everything they can to bring down a Prime Minister.
Yep.
Dave says a similar thing. Who is the mole that keeps leaking this stuff and what is their agenda?
Yes, that's a good question, actually. I hadn't considered that because, as we mentioned, this was actually it was a mock briefing. So it wasn't the press weren't actually there. This was a sort of a practice run for Allegra, who was the press secretary at the time. So presumably it would have been civil servants who were there, perhaps some advisors, and they were putting questions to her that might be posed to her. So, you know, and also, of course, it could be somebody who had control and access to the recordings, so it might not be a civil servant at all.
No, and it could be done for a couple of different reasons. Someone there, I think it was Tony, who said about, are they trying to bring down the government? It might be the other way round, It might be very much like they don't want any more restrictions and they think that this might create an element of hypocrisy. Boris Johnson could never now reimpose some kind of lockdown or stop Christmas parties because he himself did it. It could go either way.
Yeah, and actually he is set to announce some more restrictions. We're expected to hear very shortly. So lots coming up today. We've got the Prime Minister's questions. I'm sure he'll be grilled, and we've got the potential of those new restrictions. But that is it from us at To The Point. But don't go away. Up next is the briefing with Gloria De Piero. As we mentioned, Prime Minister's questions, so you won't want to miss that. Don't go away. But first, here's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. The weather stays unsettled today in the wake of Storm Barra. There'll be further rain or showers as well as gusty winds, and in some places still the risk of gale force winds. Because Barra is still with us, but it is now a filling area of low pressure, so the isobars will gradually start to become less tightly packed and the rain or showers become less, widespread, but still the potential for some strong winds rotating around the centre of the low, which will be across southern Scotland during the rest of today, and showers continuously feeding into many areas, particularly northeast Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England, as well as Wales. The strongest winds today are expected across parts of South Wales and southwest England, with gales here, 65-mile-per-hour gusts for exposed coastal spots. So still the risk of disruption from that, and it's going to feel cold with those showers moving through in many places and the gusty wind as well. The potential for snow over the hills of northern England and Scotland, but not on the scale as yesterday. Through the night, the showers continue in many spots. The winds do come down, so less breezy overnight. And in some places, with clear skies and slightly lighter winds, temperatures will dip close to freezing, so a chilly start.